Waves TV. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, editor of PlanetWaves.net and host of PlanetWaves.fm, here with a special report on Mercury stationing direct on Election Day in the United States. That is a kind of a strange thing to happen in the middle of Election Day. What it is saying is, first of all, just the basic fact of the matter is that the approximately 22-day Mercury retrograde that began approximately 22 days ago ends right in the middle of Election Day. Mercury stations direct at 12:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. So that means that when the polls are opening in California, Mercury will be right at that point, and then right in the middle of the day here on the East Coast, that will be happening exactly. And the effect of Mercury changing directions is unusual, and we've all felt it. It's something called the Mercury storm. The Mercury storm is approximately 3 days on either side of Mercury retrograde when Mercury is moving the most slowly and is therefore in many ways the most unpredictable, and also where things are subject to reversals, where it is possible for things to seem to be going one way, particularly very close to the station direct, and then they go another way. And this is one of the reasons why you don't really want to begin important things when Mercury is changing directions in either direction. If you do something at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde or right before the Mercury retrograde, that's a little like leaving the port in your in your vessel while the tide is coming in. I mean, let's say the tide is rolling in at 4 knots and your boat can only go 6 knots. That means you're only going to be making two knots over the bottom of the overland, basically, is what it comes down to. The current's going that way, you're going that way, and that's going to slow you down. And so you want to wait till the tide is going out, and then you ride with the tide. And so if the tide is going out at 4 knots and you're going 6 knots, you're going to be going 10 knots on the way out to sea. And that's the kind of thing you want to do. Now, that's Mercury going retrograde. Mercury stationing direct has a similar effect, but the reversal can be very sudden, and things can be going in one direction all the way up to the time that the Mercury station direct happens, and then suddenly they're going a different way. And this is right in the middle of Election Day, and nobody could have planned it this way because Election Day is fixed in the Constitution. It's the Tuesday after the first Monday, and so it's not like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were Freemasons back in 1781 making up the Constitution, and they thought, oh, in 2020 Mercury will be stationing direct. They did not have ephemerides that went out this far. It was nearly 3 centuries ago, so forget about it. So this is pure fate operating, you might say, and we are about to see something very unusual happen. Now, this is taking place in the middle of an election where there's only one issue, and that issue is, quote, COVID, unquote. And with, quote, COVID, unquote, the distinguishing thing about this issue is that the government has not said one true thing in the course of the entire matter. I mean, do I look like a person who sits around concocting conspiracy theories? I promise you, I am not. I couldn't be interested. But what I am interested in is investigating the claims of government officials. And as you will see, if you skip back a bunch of videos to my presentation in mid-February introducing COVID, I entered this story quite objective and naive, with beginner's mind, with absolutely no suspicion, offering nothing but support and admiration for the public health officials who were going to so wisely and selflessly guide us through this thing. And then the lockdown came, and the weeks progressed, and I began to break the quote COVID unquote story into 19 different issues. As when working with law, you can't take something this huge and take it on all at once. You've got to break it down into issues. I'll come back to that in a second. Right now, I want to talk about Mercury stationing direct and why it's so interesting happening on the day of the United States election. Remember, too, that in the United States, we do a lot of early voting. The votes have been coming in for weeks now, so there's really no way to time the beginning of the election. Therefore, we are pretty much stuck timing the end of the election since you need some tangible time to work with. However, when you have a major event on election day, it is fair to use that major event as the basis chart for the event itself. And so with an event this important and Mercury stationing retrograde, which it only does 3 times a year, exactly on this day, we know that we have got our chart. And it's distinctive and a little strange for a few different reasons, which I will get to as soon as I write a word on the chart. All right, so here's what the chart looks like. Ta-da! And you can see that there's a T-square. Down here in Cancer, what is going on down there? There's got to be something, but let's pretend there's not for now. So here we have this T-square. It's called a T-square because it really would look like a T if you had, let's see, there's the cross on the T and there's the vertical. But let's put this back. So it's called a T-square when there's 3 corners of the ground cross or ground square activated, and that's what we've got here. Here's Mr. Mercury stationing direct, and it's doing so mixed up in the bedlam of the what amounts to a Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. That's many events in one. It's really 3 events in one. Because, let's put this down so you get some light. Because at the beginning of the year, okay, we'll put it back up, Saturn and Pluto formed an exact conjunction on January 12th, the very day, to the day, that China sent out the phony codes for the polymerase chain reaction non-test for, quote, COVID, unquote. On the day of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, the day. Look, and if they're doing astrology in China, it's probably Chinese astrology, which is cool. But I don't think they're looking at Saturn and Pluto. So once again, we have an example of a kind of bizarrely serendipitous event happening on the day of a major global event, and that conjunction was last exact in like 1983 or something. I keep forgetting the year, but it was the very beginning of the 1980s. It was about 37 years ago. That's a long time. So it's the first one that we're seeing in 37 years, and it happened on January 12th, and that's the day that this whole shit show officially began, because we wouldn't be in this whole shit show without this thing called the polymerase chain reaction, a research tool that is falsely being used as a diagnostic tool and getting approximately 95 to 100% false positives. Those are scientific statements upon which I stake my name and my reputation as a science journalist. Okay, so on that day, they sent out these phony codes, computer codes, that we're now kind of prisoners of, and there was a conjunction on that day. You might say, kaboom. Then, through the course of the year, Jupiter and Pluto have made a series of conjunctions, 2 so far. Third one is coming up on the 12th of let's get the right amount of light here, on the 12th of November. So that's coming. That's in the future. As you can see, Jupiter is about to make that conjunction. Then Jupiter and Saturn go into Aquarius, and they make a conjunction on December 21st. So it's a year of very big conjunctions. And during that year of very big conjunctions, Mercury is stationing square the whole mess, but exactly, in particular, exactly square Saturn. It's also opposite Eris. That's how you say it. And Mars is retrograde in Aries near Eris. So Mercury is going to station direct on the 3rd. Mars is going to station direct on the 13th. There's a 10-day interval. This is not going to feel like the normal Mercury station direct where it's like, okay, all good, good to go, everything's good, let's go on vacation and start spending money again, because we've got Mars hanging out in Aries, and Mars is kind of in its storm phase. It's not going anywhere right now. It's going to take 10 more days to stay from tomorrow to station direct, and then it's going to seem to sit in place. So when Mars stations direct, it seems to just sit there for weeks, and that's what's going on. So we're in the midst of this Mercury storm. Mercury is square Saturn. I'm going to interpret that in approximately 2 more sentences, but we have to recognize we're waiting also for Mars to station direct. Okay, so there's 2 inner planet stations direct. It's very important to keep that in mind when you're doing planning. It also suggests an interval of complete and utter chaos that we're about to have because of these 2 stations direct. I would say we'll probably know who the president is unless there's some massive landslide and this thing does not go to court. We will know by the 13th. Not a predictive astrologer, but I will predict that. If I'm wrong, nobody gets hurt. Okay, so now here's the weird bit. What I think is the weird bit, or maybe just interesting. First of all, thing to remember is that the last time Mercury stationed direct on election day was in 2000. That was the year that George Bush lost both the electoral vote and the popular vote, but still became president. He lost the electoral vote because Bush actually lost Florida. But he was given Florida because the votes were counted incorrectly and he never contested them. And he lost the popular vote by some large number of votes. Popular vote, by the way, meaning the vote. I hate the word term popular vote, so I always just say popular vote, and then I put in parentheses, i.e. the vote, because that's the vote. People voted. So if that were followed, Hillary Clinton would be president today, and the world would be a perfect place. All right, so first weird thing about this is that Mercury is square Saturn, stationed direct on election day, and Mercury is square Saturn. So that argues for a pause, for a delay, for a methodical and slow working out. But it's also a square, and a square represents a break or alteration in the flow rather than things going with the flow. So now let's get to the thing that I think is the real standout issue in this chart, and that is that Mercury is conjunct an asteroid at the time that it stations direct. Now, there's a lot of asteroids, and a lot of things are conjunct asteroids at different times. However, the asteroid that Mercury is conjunct is called Sauer, S-A-U-E-R. That is not about sourdough bread or sauerbraten or sauerkraut or Sig Sauer, the gun manufacturer, or the Sauer, a river in Belgium. None of the above. It is about an astronomer who worked for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory named Carl G. Sauer, who was a rather brilliant guy who did things with his days like calculate the trajectories of how to land a rocket on an asteroid. Imagine that. How to land a rocket from the Earth, which is moving, the rocket's moving, the asteroid's moving, and Carl Sauer was so smart he could figure out how to plant a rocket ship on an asteroid, which we have now done, and I'm sure this was done with either his calculations or his calculation methods. Worked for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Caltech for many years, and to me seems like an eminently decent guy who served his country and served his university and all of that good stuff. Here's the weird part. In the 9/11 chart, which I've done quite a bit of work on over the years, I made a late discovery about 11 years after the thing happened, which is that in the very distinctive ascendant, do I have any blank charts here? We'll just use another chart. In the ascendant of the chart for the 9/11 incident, That is to say, the moment that Flight 11 hit the World Trade Center, Mercury was rising. That's how that looks. This is not a very good chart, but there's the ascendant, and Mercury is exactly rising in the ascendant in the 9/11 chart. That alone is intense because Mercury is the wing god, and it's a chart for a thing with wings hitting an airplane. It had a fairly clean shot of that airplane. It was the exact rising planet to the degree that only lasts for 4 minutes. So this is some really good, again, serendipitous timing. I cannot imagine that the very best Arab astrologer, they're probably damn good astrologers, could coordinate both the timing of the chart and the timing of the event to have that work out. Just saying, I don't think that that's possible. Not in this dimension of the quantum field anyway. Notably, Mercury was trine Saturn. And this is the distinguishing feature. You'll see I've written a lot of articles about this. Mercury exactly rising, exactly trine Saturn, and notably exactly conjunct the asteroid Sauer, the chart of a very weird plane crash with the namesake asteroid of one of the world's most brilliant flight dynamics engineers ever, both rising. So, what does that tell you? Well, it says that 9/11 was exceptionally well engineered. I mean, I have to hand it to those people. They did a terrible thing, but they did it very well. And, a job like that, that's a beautiful collaborative effort. That's just something that, like, everyone has to join hands and make that happen. It requires a plan. It requires engineering. And I have taken the meaning of the asteroid Sauer, at least a proposed delineation is what I like to call it till I've seen it working 5 or 10 times, as an engineered feat, something that was planned, a flight that was planned in some way. Okay, so now the weird, interesting, or cool thing about tomorrow's election chart. Mercury, stationing direct, is in an exact conjunction to the asteroid Sauer. So we have one event evocative of 9/11, Mercury conjunct Sauer. We have another event evocative of the election of 2000, which led to 9/11, which is Mercury stationing direct on the day of the election. So this chart has some interesting throwbacks, and of its own, it's a very dynamic and exciting chart. But my analysis is that when in the chart where Mercury and Sauer were trine Saturn, everything went off swimmingly. Boom. The airplane did, however, whatever the heck it was, I imagine an airplane, did the thing, and we created a big dramatic effect. That's a trine. In the case of the election chart, Mercury and Sauer are square Saturn. They are applying in a square to Saturn. The square has not happened yet. I don't know when Sauer gets there. Mercury doesn't get there until Friday, and that's the release point of the square aspect. So Friday too is going to be a very interesting day, and I will have in studio a guest by the name of Tom Ferdinandino, who is the president of an organization called Rethinking AIDS, and we're going to talk about what happened with HIV and the relationship of HIV to AIDS, a history that I have only recently learned, and is one of the most strange and interesting things that I've ever encountered in the history of science. All that said, I don't think the plan for tomorrow is going to go according to plan. What plan, you say? Well, whose plan? Maybe Russia's plan, Iran's plan, China's plan, the Democrats' plan, the Republicans' plan, your plan. The plan is going to go differently tomorrow because Mercury stations not only direct, but it stations direct in a square to Saturn. That functions as a very tense dynamic rather than of something of ease and flow, and it's all going to come off swimmingly. So what we may witness tomorrow is not things going right. we may witness tomorrow things completely going wrong. And if you're wondering why things seem so strange, well, ask yourself how this would have gone had the plan actually worked. But this time, it doesn't look like the plan is going to actually work. And frankly, right now, no, I would say I'd rather see almost any plan not work. We're in the time when we don't want to see plans working very well. You and I, we're responding to situations other people are planning, and screw them. Okay, a couple of things additionally. First of all, there's only one issue in this election. There is now no more free country to rally for. There is no economy to rally for. 40 million or something people lost their jobs this year. Wow. So any honest presidential candidate would be saying, I'm going to do my best to save the United States of America from total mayhem and destruction. But they're not saying that. They're saying, wow, this is, we're going to have jobs and roads and all that. But what they're really saying is COVID. Biden is saying he's going to handle COVID better than that fuck up Trump. As I've said before, and I am not a fan of Trump, I have basically nothing in common with Trump except that we both come from New York City, is that Trump was essentially a patsy in this situation. This whole COVID thing is Tony Fauci's game. There's a few other people involved at the very top level. Bill Gates is one of them. A guy named Kristen Drosten is one of them. A few other people who actually were the fast team that got this thing going. But I assure you that it was not Trump's gig, and that if Trump handled it badly, he had a lot of bad advice that was given to him, and was convinced to go along with a lockdown that I don't see any statistical scientific evidence saying that the lockdown worked. If the lockdown worked, the United States and the world wouldn't be in the situation that it's in. If masking worked, we wouldn't have 80% of the new COVID cases being people who wore masks. But it's very hard for people to think in logical terms at all in our time in history, when you can basically say anything, and if you're charming enough, you can be believed, and it's just a kind of completely freaking ridiculous situation. So I'm going to say this again. This is not Trump's gig. I stake my reputation on it. This is Fauci's gig. Fauci is a complete con artist. He's been at this for a long time. He's been at the center, at the NIH, for as long as J. Edgar Hoover was at the FBI. And when you're a very powerful government official, you don't belong in your job for 35 years. Fauci was my age when 35. He's about to turn 80, and he got the job in the 1980s. So that's just completely over the top. For me, the big revelation that I am dealing with this week is it has been explained to me and made clear to me, and the documents have been given to me, that SARS-CoV-2 has not been purified or isolated. The federal government has no samples of the virus it's claiming has killed 220,000 Americans. I want to say that again. The federal government, on its own website, on the CDC website, has said that it has no samples of this virus that it's claimed has killed 220,000 people. If it has no samples, and anyone indeed has been killed, and it appears that there is some pathogen going around, it cannot be SARS-CoV-2. If it was SARS-CoV-2, there would be samples of the stuff, and we'd then have to wonder why there's not samples. We also know that the polymerase chain reaction is getting anywhere between 95 and 100% false positives. You may say, well, gee, I thought you were a smart guy back in 2018 or 2017 when you were writing about astrology, and now that you're trying to talk about this science shit, you're just... No. I stake my reputation on this as well, and fortunately, the New York Times has done now 2 stories this year and 1 story in 2007 which my team has personally verified the 2007 story in the New York Times, which said that the polymerase chain reaction can get 100% false positives. Now you're thinking, that's just crazy. That can't be true, because if it was true, then what the hell is going on? That's what I'm saying to you. I'm saying you can be skeptical of what I'm saying, or you can maybe listen to what I'm saying and do some reading. So the place to do some reading is go on planetwaves.net, and you'll see up at the top we've been updating COVID-19 news now every day, sometimes 10 times a day since March 3rd. We've got approximately 1,000 articles on that page. We have made a chronicle of this whole matter, documented in what has been published in the news and on YouTube. Lots of those videos have been taken down, but we put them there, and you can find most of them on BitChute if you look for it. Where I have just dug into this thing with the help of some very smart people, most notably somebody named Cindy, and somebody named Spencer, and somebody named Abby, and somebody named Robin, and somebody named Rachel. And we are at it basically night and fucking day, figuring out what is going on and taking the 1,000 shards of broken glass and putting this together. And I am telling you, something is wrong with the whole story. And if people are getting sick, and I hear from you, I understand that people have had very serious issues like pneumonia, things that exceed the normal flu. What you have had cannot have been SARS-CoV-2, because there are no samples of SARS-CoV-2. Therefore, it had to be something else. That's not that weird for something to be misdiagnosed. But to have something diagnosed correctly, usually you go through months of tests. You can go through years of tests. You get second opinions. There's all kinds of things you have to do to get a correct diagnosis. It's not just one and done, one test. Oh, good, that's what you've got. How simple, very convenient. You've got coronavirus. You're suffering from COVID, which is at least 10 different syndromes. Something else is going on. Well, what could that be? We live in a society where people, this just messed my mind up, 4.2 billion subscriptions a year are filled in the United States of America. That's right. A country of 300 million people fills 4.2 billion prescriptions every year. And there's all kinds of shit in the air and the water and the food. And they've got electrical radiation rays coming at us from every direction, from above and below. Should it shock anyone that people are getting sick? Well, what precipitated this now? I don't know. Google Event 201, EVENT 201, and see what's up. As I've said a number of times, I do enjoy doing science research journalism. I actually, thankfully, good for me and good for you, I do like digging into this and writing about this. But I am not happy with where the facts have led in this story. I am not happy with where the facts have led in this story. And I would encourage you, in case you think that I am misled or that I am in some way prejudiced, to just scroll back a few videos. You're right on YouTube right now. Go back to my about coronavirus video from, I think, February 8th or something, 2020. And look at my presentation and see if you can find a trace of suspicion or malfeasance in any way or conspiracy theorizing. I was talking about the immune system, and I was explaining to you, my beloved viewers, listeners, and readers, why I thought at that time the government was so concerned about this. And that is called giving the benefit of the doubt. That is called the precautionary principle. What do you do in the face of missing data or no data? What do you do before you've done the investigation? Well, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. And then I research in earnest with no special agenda, only looking at where the facts are leading me. And it was an article by someone named John Rappaport that opened my eyes to the fact that the polymerase chain reaction had a lot of problems. Nothing but problems, really. And then I found an article by Celia Farber written back in February, Celia Farber covered the polymerase chain reaction in the mid-1990s. The PCR test was a huge issue during the AIDS crisis. So now I've had considerable opportunity to dialogue with and read the work of Celia Farber and John Rappaport. They've provided me with their documentation. The inventor of the test says it's not a diagnostic tool. Everyone understands. The FDA says it's not a diagnostic tool. CDC says it's not a diagnostic tool. Doesn't prove that a person is infected. Doesn't prove that they're infectious. Doesn't prove that they're sick. You might ask, why then does the New York Times say there were 99,000 confirmed new cases of infection today? Well, you tell me, or you ask them. I'm planning to put it to them as best I can put it to them. As a writer, I've had a long relationship with the New York Times, and I've spent a lot of time critiquing the New York Times, and I am pissed off about this. This is journalistic malpractice. They are lying. I'm not saying I think they're lying. I'm not saying I suspect they're lying. I'm not saying I've got a theory they're lying. I'm saying I've documented them and all the other media lying about this. It'll be interesting to see where this whole business goes after Election Day. Please follow planetwaves.net, front page, and daily astrology and COVID-19 news. I'm planning to be back with another edition of Planet Waves FM on Friday night with Tom D. Ferdinando on the program, if assuming all that hooks up and he makes it up here in good condition. And I may yet be back with another edition of Planet Waves TV. I would say vote if your conscience says that that's the thing to do. Don't just vote. Vote if you know in your heart it's the right thing and you really believe in the candidate that you're voting for. Thanks for listening. Once again, Eric Francis, editor of Planet Waves, host of Planet Waves FM, signing off. Bye for now.